Age depends on their age and gender. And
No,
all
no,
of
at
these
times,
things,
you're right,
isn't
you're
it,
right,
yeah?
you're right. At times,
So you
everyone's
can't
limited.
say generalize it.
But 1.26
you have to be over 78
But 1.2
or 79 years old.
Not always. It's only in times of particular when there's a riot that
You need to nearly die.
But 1.2 million Muslims pray there every year. Jews aren't allowed to pray, and when a Jew does pray on there, it's one of the tragedies that incites violence. Like there's riots because a Jew prayed. We should, I believe, sincerely in my heart, Jews and Muslims should be able to pray on that site. When the temple stood there, there was a gallery for the nations of the world to pray and worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the only thing I'm saying there, I believe Jews and Muslims can and should be able to pray on Haram al-Sharif. I don't believe today, because of the Jordanian Jews aren't allowed.
But it's not happening.
What's not happening?
Peace is not happening.
So that's why we've got to make peace.
And it's it is the fault of the people in power in that land.
I would say on both sides.
No. Which is the state of Israel?
So
the state of Israel. Hamas is not in the West Bank. Hamas is not in the West Bank.
They are.
Yeah.
I mean, they literally threw out the Mufti from Haram al-Sharif.
Hamas how can Hamas do that?
They literally did.
It's the people. It's the people of the West Bank. It's the people of the West Bank.
Hamas have a footprint in the West Bank.
The point is there is a comparison.
Hebron is an example. Hebron is a Hamas foothold, as an example.
We have two models to follow.
Okay.
One model is the Islamic civilization or the Muslim civilization, loosely speaking, and the other model is what the state of Israel is presenting today to the world. The first model is much longer in chronology than the second model. The atrocities the second model has introduced to the world were not committed throughout the period of 1,300 years of the first model. Do you agree with that?
No, I disagree, and I want to tell you why I disagree.
Okay, let's first talk about the period.
No.
1,300 years of Islam ruling the land of Palestine, minus the Crusades, and then State of Israel since 1948.
Allow me to answer in my own way.
Yeah.
So I think people can look at history with rose-tinted glasses. As a Jew, I look at Jewish history through rose-tinted glasses. As a Muslim, you're likely to look at Islamic history through rose-tinted glasses. You're likely to look favourably upon your own history.
True.
Because we have confirmation biases.
True.
So I think
agree.
The best thing we can do today to understand who would have greater freedoms is to look at the societies that exist there today. Not that existed there 1,300 years ago, not that existed there 500 years ago, but let's compare Israeli society to Palestinian society. So the Israeli society has hundreds of mosques, freedom of religion. You actually have a Muslim party which are closer to the Muslim Brotherhood than to, say, some of the more moderate streams of Islam in the UK. In government, in a coalition in the Israeli government, you have nearly 2 million Muslims that live as Israeli citizens with full equality. They perform just as well as the Jews, often better than the Jews, in education and various other fields within Israeli society. Now we look at Palestinian society. There is not one Jew. Why is there not one Jew in Palestinian society? Because the Jews were ethnically cleansed in the 30s and 40s from the areas that now are controlled by the Palestinian Authority. Jordan and Egypt ethnically cleansed the Jews from that region, and they believed they were fighting a jihad. That's the language their leaders used. Whether it was Hajj bin al-Husseini, whether it was the Jordanians, the Egyptians, the ulama in Al-Hazar, they all used the language of jihad.
You're making a lot of points. You made about 15 points.
And I'll bring it all up to 1 point. And I'll bring it all to 1 point.
No, how can you bring them all to 1 point?
Because it's all what it is all.
If I haven't responded, because I need to dismantle each and every single point.
You can dismantle them all. The point I'm saying all of this for is we need to look at Palestinian society today and Israeli society. The synagogues were blown up by the Jordanians. The Jews were ethnically cleansed from the Jordanians in 1948 and 49.
Well, let him finish.
The Jews were ethnically cleansed from Gaza by the Egyptians. Yeah. Hajj bin al-Husseini declared Muslims, I declare jihad, slaughter the Jews, slaughter them all.
Okay.
In contrast, and this is my closing point.
Okay.
In contrast, Israel, 20% of its population are Muslim. They have complete equality with the Jews. They have freedom of religion, freedom of political representation. Today, that's the reality.
Okay, good.
Under Palestinians,
you mean what remains from
okay,
them?
okay. Now, let me do a comparison between what Israel is doing today and what the Muslims did for 1,300 years. That's why I want everyone to go into history and understand the realities, the two realities you talked about. Firstly, let me quickly highlight your point that people always look at the history with a very sympathetic lens. Yeah, no problem. I agree with you. But when we look at impartial historians or partially impartial historians like Karen Armstrong, let's say, Karen Armstrong has written a book on the history of Jerusalem. In that very book, she states categorically that Muslims brought a system which allowed the three Abrahamic faiths to coexist for the first time in history. That's what she's saying. She's not a Muslim as far as I know, and she's not a Jew as far as I know, although she was teaching at a rabbinical school. And this has been, by the way, said by many Jewish historians as well.
Which rabbinical school was she teaching at?
She was teaching, I read her profile. She was teaching at, okay, History of Jerusalem. Okay.
Muhammad.
Oh yeah. That's a different book. Okay. Yeah. So I don't know if she is Jewish or not. I don't know what. She's not. She was a nun.
Yeah.
She was a nun. But she was teaching at a rabbinical school.
I don't know.
read.
That.
Okay, check her
rabbinic
profile.
schools, you usually only have male teachers, so it sounds a bit.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, it sounds.
suspect.
Yeah, I agree. But I read that in her profile.
Like she maybe gave a lecture there or something, but it's not common. They're very segregated.
Okay.
Jewish
Okay.
rabbinical schools.
So even if I'm wrong on that, no problem. But
Yeah,
my
it's
point
not the
still
point,
stands.
yeah.
My point stands that she can be seen as an impartial historian, and that's what she had to say about the Muslim period in particular. Now, to your comparison between Israel, the state of Israel, and the Palestinians, why don't we do a larger comparison? The Muslim civilization before the creation of Israel, and what happened after the state of Israel came to power. Now, let me do a breakdown. You're saying there are 2 million Arabs or Muslims living within Israel, and they are treated as equal citizens,
complete equality.
and all of that. But on the other hand, the Palestinians are severely brutalized, who are also Arabs and Muslims. So the Palestinians are receiving a different treatment, and the ones living within the state are receiving another treatment. Now, imagine throughout the Muslim civilization, for 1,300 years, the Jews of Spain flourished, produced the best scholars, poets, theologians, philosophers, you name it. The best scholars ever produced in Jewish history were produced during the Islamic period in Spain. Okay? The Jewish historians will confirm that. Now imagine if the Muslims kept those Jewish people nicely, pampered, and all of that, just like you are claiming the Arabs are pampered. Okay, in Israel, I'm using that word. I like to go a step further. And then the Muslims start brutalizing the rest of the Jewish people in the world, because the Muslims ruled land from Spain to China. The largest population of the Jewish people was in the Muslim lands, confirmed by Jewish historians. Okay, a Jewish historian called Lesner. Okay, he's a well-established historian in the U.S. He has written a book recently on interactions between the Jewish people and the Muslim people. Okay, Jacob Lasner. Jacob Lasner is his name, and he says the same thing. The majority of the Jewish people lived under the domain of Islam. Okay, for over 1,000 years. So imagine if the Muslims are taking care of the Jewish people in Spain and they started to brutalize the rest, which they did not, right? This is exactly, unfortunately, is what's happening in Palestine today. You're saying the Arabs within the state of Israel are pampered, or they are taken care of, or they live as equal citizens.
Yeah,
they have equality, while the Arabs on the other side of the border, okay,
They cannot
undefined border.
They cannot even come to hospital.
They can't go to toilet. They can't even. I'm sorry to say, they can't even. Yeah. So there is no comparison.
Listen,
So
there is another
so
thing.
the Islamic case still
Adnan,
stands strong.
Adnan, there is another thing as well. When the Jews start coming from Europe, from different places of Europe, and they start coming as a reaction to what happened to them with the Nazis.
Yeah.
What happened to them? What they have started. They start
Look, we don't
bringing-
condone
yeah.
any of that. That what happened during the conflict, whether it was caused by the Zionists or whether it was caused by the Arabs, whoever caused. We don't condone any of that because atrocities were committed.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, there is a
no
cause.
doubt. Yeah.
The
There
cause
is no
was
doubt.
political.
Yeah, the cause was political. But when they started, you see those who were the militias of Haganah and those who literally wiped villages, like literally cleansed villages, killed every single person. So the natural thing from what happened from the Arabs, which is wrong again, that they start as well do the same thing. It was a kind
No.
of a reaction.
It's not
One
wrong
of
to
the
defend
things-
yourself.
Yeah,
It's
one
not
of
wrong
the
to
things-
defend yourself.
Defending.
If-
One of the
if-
things
if people-
he claims if it happened, and I doubt most of these things they said, okay, those synagogues that you mentioned, they were blown up by the Jordanians. Let's say, at the end of the day, I'm Jordanian myself. Yeah.
Jordanian, Palestinian, or
No, I'm
Jordanian?
Jordanian.
Jordanian.
So I'm Jordanian. I myself am Jordanian, and in Jordan, yeah, we still have all these churches that
And synagogues.
and synagogue used to be there. So my question is, why the Muslims,
There are
as
no
you say in the
synagogues
name,
in Jordan?
listen, why the Muslims in the name of jihad, they didn't blow up all these churches? Why they didn't do this?
So-
Why they targeted some synagogues according to this? And I doubt
The whole
that this
synagogue-
happened.
We don't know if that's
Yeah?
true. Is that
I don't
true?
know if that's
The
true.
entire
Let's
old
say-
city, when
Yeah.
they conquered the old city,
Yeah,
all the synagogues
other
were
thing-
described.
the
The
other thing-
Kulver and various,
the
they're
other
being
thing-
rebuilt now.
the other
But
thing-
this is a good question.
Yeah.
Why did the Jewish people started to leave from Morocco to India,
Okay.
and they started to
So let
travel?
me-
They started to travel towards the state of Israel. Why? What happened to the Jewish people suddenly, having lived in these lands for over 1,000 years? Suddenly, in the 1940s and 30s, they are now leaving these lands en masse and traveling to Palestine. What happened? What happened?
Perfect. So there's 5 points I'm going to address, which you've gone over all of them. I had to keep notes.
No, one by one.
Exactly, one by one. So we started with the golden age of Spain, and he rightfully pointed out, and he's a knowledgeable brother. They both are knowledgeable brothers, and they pointed out that in Al-Andalus, the Jews flourished. One of my favourite rabbis, so the rabbi I follow the closest, Rambam, Maimonides.
Yeah.
He came from a family in Al-Andalus. And it's very interesting because you can follow what happened to people like Rambam to understand what happened to the Jews who were living under Islam, because it's the perfect example. So you have different khulafa, you have different caliphates throughout time. And some of them are good to their Muslim subjects and bad to their Muslim subjects. And some of them are good to their Jewish subjects and bad to their Jewish subjects. So under what some scholars will describe as the golden age of Judaism, or certainly of Islam, and they sometimes call it the golden age of Judaism. It wasn't a golden age of ours, it was maybe Moses or the Talmudic periods, the Mishnaic periods. But that aside, the Jews flourished in Al-Andalus.
And
and just to really reinforce that, you had a Jewish general who led the Muslims over the Mediterranean from North Africa into Al-Andalus, and it helped the Muslims to conquer. You had Jewish physicians. Jews reached soaring heights in Al-Andalus. But
Yes.
what happened next? The Almohads conquered.
When
And what
did Almohads come?
I don't know the exact date.
12th
but
century.
12th century.
12th
And,
century.
what did they do to the
So
Jews?
what happened between-
I listened to
What
both
happened between the-
Adnan, I listened to both of you respectfully. Please do the same.
Sure.
So, following Al-Andalus, the Almohads slaughtered hundreds of thousands of Jews.
Hundreds of thousands.
Yes. Let him
continue. Let him continue. I'll respond.
I'll bring you
I will
sources.
respond.
I'll bring you sources.
No problem.
They threatened the Jews: you either convert to Islam, which you can't do in Islam, but they did. You leave, or we kill you. And so you had Rambam left from one Islamic caliphate and went to another, and he then became the physician for Salahuddin in Fustat in Egypt.
So Muslims gave him refuge for Muslims.
Yes.
So
That's
so
my
that's
point.
a virtue for us.
No, that's my point.
Yeah.
That's my point.
Yeah.
They're a good caliphate that have been very good for the Jews, and they've been other this bad. The Ottomans is an example. The Ottomans at times were good for the Jews, but coming back to Hebron, in 1517, the Ottomans came into Hebron and they massacred the Jewish community.
1570s.
1517, 1517.
But they were
Okay.
destroyed by
They- they-
1517.
Wait. Let him finish. Let him finish.
2 minutes.
Yeah.
And now I've just got to go back to my thing so I don't miss them. So That was so. All I wanted to do was agree with you that there have been caliphates that have been very good for the Jews, and some caliphates not so great.
Okay,
for the
let me
Jews.
respond to that very quickly before we move
no,
on.
because you went through 5 points, and then you can respond to each of my.
That's too much, you know. We
No, I
respond to
know.
one point.
No. I listened
I'll
to
be
all
very
5
short.
of your points.
I'll be
listened to
very
all
short.
5 of your points. Make a note of it. I made a note on my phone so I didn't miss them.
No problem.
So you then
Remind-
talked about.
remind me
I
of your
will.
points,
I've got them on camera. It's on my camera, on my phone. The next one you talked about was the difference in laws, and I agree with you. There are differences of how Israelis treat Arabs that live in Israel to Arabs that live in, say, Gaza or the West Bank. And that's because we're in conflict with Gaza, and less so with the West Bank, but certainly in Gaza.
So it's justified.
It's not justified, it's war.
So it's justified.
No, you're putting words in my mouth. I've never said anything.
There's no
about
war.
justified.
There's no war.
There's no war.
So I've lost people to that war, Adnan. You may have lost friends, I've lost friends to this war.
No, there's no war.
So when someone fires 4,000
War is between two rivals. Where's the second rival?
Adnan, I let you speak.
Yeah.
If you dissent, if you have a difference of opinion,
I will
your
speak in
turn.
my time. Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
So when it comes to the laws, many of my friends who are settlers are advocating for what both of you are saying. They're saying that the Arabs who live in the West Bank, they call it Judea and Samaria, we call it Judea and Samaria, Yehuda v'Shomron. Arabs who live in this region should be given Israeli citizenship. They should have the exact same laws as Israeli Arabs, Israeli Jews. There should be one law for everyone. Palestinians, some Palestinians say the same. There's a company called the Palestinian Center for Policy and Research, and they survey Palestinians. They're based in Ramallah, they're associated with the PLO. They research and they ask the Palestinians between the ages of 18 and 25, would you rather live under the Palestinian Authority, under Abu Mazen, or under Israel? The majority of them, I don't know the exact number, said they'd rather live under Israel because Israel throws its politicians in jail. And so there are Palestinians and Israeli settlers and Israelis who say what you want. They want Arabs in Israel, in the West Bank, to be Israeli citizens and have the exact same law applied to them. Those that support the two-state solution, which is where the situation we're in at the moment, say, hang on a minute, if the Palestinians want their own state, then they can't be under Israeli law because that would mean Israel would be sovereign over there. Therefore, they have to be under, as long as Israel's in there, military law. And so I think there's a compelling argument for both. If you support Palestinian statehood alongside Israel, then there's an argument that the Palestinians should be under the Palestinian Authority and not under Israel. Then I'll quickly come through the final points. You mentioned, actually, so you went to the Haganah, we'll go to the Haganah. Synagogue standing in the Haganah, I think so they're kind of tied together. So in 1947, let's actually fast forward. When did all the conflicts start? Where between the Jews and the Arabs in that region? Because that's really what we're getting at here. The Nabi Musa riots in 1921, later riots in 1929, which led to the massacre of the Jewish community in Hebron again, which led to massacres of Jews in Jaffa, Jerusalem, Haifa. The first shots were always fired by, unfortunately, our Palestinian cousins. In the 1947 civil war, it started when Arabs attacked 2 Jewish buses just outside Tel Aviv. 1948, when Israel declared independence, 5 Arab armies, including Jordan, 5 Arab armies, including Jordan, 2 minutes, 5 Arab armies, including, yes, it's all right. Okay. They can respond, if they disagree, they will respond. And 5 Arab armies, including Jordan.
He's giving an essay, I mean.
Yeah, of course I'm giving an essay. You both gave an essay, I'm giving a response.
I want him to finish, no problem. Then we will give an essay, no problem.
It's good, we can all give our essays. Jordan, Egypt, Syria, Lebanon kind of, Iraq, they all invaded Israel in 1948. Invaded Israel, yeah. Invaded. Jordan crossed over the Jordan River. Conquered all of the land. Jordan actually I have more respect for than the other Arab armies. When Jordan conquered the West Bank, and they renamed Judea and Samaria the West Bank when they did that, what they did when certain Arab militias conquered Jewish villages, they massacred the Jews. The Jordanians even shot Arabs who were trying to massacre Jews. Other times you had Jordanian militiamen who were screaming how do you say slaughter the Jews? Idab al-Yahud? Screaming that, but the legion and those in charge actually went to great lengths many times to avoid massacres.
You made your point.
Just to make, and I'll finish with this point. Had the Arabs, Palestinians, Jordanians, Syrians, Lebanese, anyone that was involved in the conflict, at any time Had they agreed to share the land with the Jews and live side by side, two states, there'd be not one refugee. There would be
Remind me of this point.
There would be not one refugee. We'd have peace. You'd probably have a Palestine that could look like Singapore. Instead, we don't have that.
Okay, I will. Okay,
fine, Adnan.
thank you very much. I will start with the last point. Had the Palestinians and the Arabs allowed the Jewish people to coexist, all of this wouldn't have happened. What happened for 1,300 years before the State of Israel was created? Where were the Jewish people living? They were living with the Muslims for over 1,000 years. They were not massacred. Okay.
I just gave you
yeah. You gave a couple of examples, and I'll give you more examples. By the way, you gave one example. I'll give you an actual example when a pogrom took place and the Jewish people were slaughtered in Spain, in Granada, in 1066. In 1066, this happened in Granada. Okay, and that was an exception. And who was condemning that at that time during the Middle Ages in medieval period? Who was condemning that behavior? The Muslims. The Muslim scholars, the ulama. They said, never can you do this. Any political events, any political incidents or political circumstances that caused incidents like this, they were condemned and they were thoroughly refuted, and things went back to normal soon after. For example, he gave an example of Al-Muhd, Al-Muwahidun. They came into Spain from North Africa, from current-day Morocco, and they removed the Al-Murabitun or Al-Muravids from power. Okay? And Al-Muwahidun were a very strict, harsh, battle-hardened, even I would say extremist Muslims, right? Like we had recent examples like ISIS. Although I wouldn't equate them with ISIS. ISIS is another league altogether. When it comes to atrocities and brutality and terrorism, ISIS is a completely different league, right? But Al-Muwahidun were very, very harsh on the Jewish people, no doubt. But this was a temple. This was and Muslims as well. Absolutely, thank you. And Muslims. Al-Muwahidun not only brutalized the Jewish people, they brutalized the Muslim people also. So just to say,
they cleanse Al-Murabitun from Andalusia. Literally.
Thank you.
They were
Thank you.
killing every single soul.
So the previous dynasty was completely wiped out. Muslim dynasty by the Almohads, and because the Jewish people had high positions in Spain at the time, okay, Al-Muwahidun blamed the Jewish people for some of the problems, and they said, okay, you need to go, or you need to convert to Islam and all that. But then who condemned that behavior? Guess who? Muslims. Not the Jewish rabbis or the Christian priests. No.
Of course they condemned it.
Let me finish now. You did your essay. Let me do my essay now. Let me do my footnotes to your essay. Wait. Let me add footnotes to his essay. The Hawashi. Okay. So he mentioned one person in particular, Maimonides. Maimonides was forcefully converted by Almohads, an extremist group. Maimonides leaves Spain. He leaves Spain. Where does he go? He doesn't go to the Jewish state of Israel. There was none, right? He doesn't go to the Christian lands in the north, to northern Europe. He makes his way to Egypt, which was governed by the Ayyubids at the time. Sultan Salahuddin was alive at the time, and Maimonides became a private personal physician of the brother of the Sultan. His name was Malik al-Afdal. So Maimonides, from a high position in Spain, left Spain and came to Egypt and continued in a high position. And then he was accused of apostasy in Egypt. Guess what? Not many Jewish people know this, and not many Jewish people talk about this. He was accused of apostasy because he had allegedly converted to Islam in Spain, and when he came to Egypt, he apostatized because he was a practicing Jew. So he was taken to court, to a Muslim court, trialed for apostasy. Who rescues him? Muslims, Muslim scholars. They come and testify because his conversion was forcefully imposed on him. He was forcefully converted. Therefore, his conversion was not valid. He cannot be trialed for apostasy. And Maimonides goes free, and he lived, quite prosperously in Egypt. So that's the response. So what Joseph did, instead of talking about the period between the 8th century and the 12th century. Okay, how many centuries is that? How many centuries is that?
4 centuries.
8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and it was in the 12th century when things went wrong with Al-Muwahidun, and then Al-Muwahidun themselves became immersed into the Spanish culture, and things changed. Things went